If you have never cried after a loss in pool, then you're probably not very good.
What separates good players from great ones? Adam King shares his insights that'll change your game forever on today's episode of Cue the Experts. Welcome to Cue the Experts, the pool improvement podcast where we dive deep into the minds of players and instructors who've dedicated themselves to mastering the sport. I'm Jeremiah Gage.
I'm Digital Dave.
And today we're joined by Adam King in Colorado. He's an accomplished player and local instructor in the Denver area. Thanks for joining us today, Adam.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Gage. I'm excited.
Yeah. And actually, we've known each other for a long time, like
since we were about
20 years.
18 years old, yeah, something like that.
Yeah. It's been a while. I remember the ACUI championships up in Utah.
Oh, yeah. I'll never forget that.
So to kick things off, if pool tables could talk, what do you think yours would say about your game?
Oh, my God. It would probably say something like, if only you could focus a little better, you'd be pretty good.
Tell us how you got started in pool and what attracted you to the sport.
Yeah, easy for me, actually. For whatever reason, nobody in my family plays. I don't have any pool influences in my life at all, but I loved the game from the very moment I saw it, really. Something just about it fascinated me. The balls rolling around and just, of course, figuring out how to make them at first was really intriguing. But then really soon, after I started playing somewhere around 15, 16 years old, something around there, me and my friends, like everybody starts we're going to the pool hall, that was all ages. And I noticed quickly that every time my friends wanted to leave, I was never quite ready to leave. I was like, I could play all night. And then shortly after that, we started playing at the university because it was all ages, and they had 9-foot tables there. And I ran into my first really good player I ever met. His name was Adis Chineska. He was a Native American living on one of the reservations out there, and he was a really, really good player, something about around a 760 Fargo, probably extremely good player. That's what I remember him as. Maybe he was more like 720, but for instance, I watched him run a 6-pack on the big table. I mean, very good player. So once I saw him, I knew I wanted to play like that. And I just never stopped. I'm really a focused guy, despite my spazziness. Once I put my brain to something, I tend to go after it really, really hard. And that's how pool was for me.
Yeah. So that you had that spark, that inspiration, and then you were just hooked after seeing
super
that.
Hooked, like a drug. I got hooked really, like, insanely from the beginning. It was like I had to go play. Like, I would be nervous at like 16, 17 years old, or like driving to the pool hall, like almost sweating because I wanted to get there so badly. Like I couldn't wait to play, which is maybe a little weird, but that's okay. I've always been a little odd. So. But I love to play. I still like to play.
Did those butterflies get bigger once you got on the table?
I don't know. I was full of enthusiasm. I wanted to get to the pool hall, like just, it was like everything else get out of the way so I could get there. But then once I got there, I was like, okay, like I'm good. But I had a lot of drive to practice. I mean, I went from someone that couldn't hold the cue correctly to winning a junior national qualifier spot in like 18 months, 2 years maybe. I worked really, really hard. I got videos, and this is before YouTube, right? I just scrounged everything. Billiards Digest, I would borrow them from friends and Inside Pool, and because nobody taught me anything. The players I was surrounded by were not interested in, in helping me along. So I did it pretty much all myself. And I got good quick, but that affected me later. I was a little raw when I got to my ceiling really quickly, and then I didn't know how to break through that ceiling. And I think it's why I'm a good instructor today. I understand the mechanics of getting better and not understanding why you can't improve from there.
Yeah, that's great that you've pivoted into sharing your knowledge with other people and helping them improve. What was that spark to start teaching?
Well, like I was just saying, because I was mostly self-taught, like from videos and things like this, and I think I just have that right kind of brain for discerning kind of what really matters and what you just wanted to be important about the game. Like where your feet go versus, where your tip ends up after you strike the ball. They're two very different things, and how much emphasis you put on them makes a huge difference in what kind of player you can become. And I had a good eye for weeding out the parts of the game that weren't so effective and putting my efforts towards the parts that were. And I think people noticed that, and I never tried to instruct anyone at first. That they came to me and asked if I would give them lessons. And so I just made up a pricing structure off the top of my head and went from there. And I was probably 20 years old when that happened. So
Wow.
people wanted instruction from me from the get-go.
Yeah, they could tell that you were a real student of the game. You had that passion, and they wanted to learn how you did it. That's great.
So you talk about getting to a junior national at after 18 months. What do you think your biggest accomplishment, ended up being in your pool journey, and how did it make you feel?
At first, qualifying for the junior nationals was like the biggest thing in my life, and then I did it, and then I went to juniors, and I got just absolutely pummeled by these kids that had been playing longer. Which for me, it didn't make me feel bad at all. I was like, okay, this is what I need to do,
Yeah.
and I'm so happy that I qualified to go there, so I could see that. So first qualifying for juniors, well, actually, my road to the juniors, just as a funny story. So I was like crazy determined, but I was still really rough around the edges, of course, because I hadn't been playing very long. So I got second in 3 junior qualifiers in a row, and you had to win to qualify back in the day. I don't know how it works now. Maybe it is the same, but it was pretty ruthless qualifying procedure. You had to win your area or you just could not go. So I get second 3 times, and the third time I get second place, I'm ahead like 6-2 in a race to 7, and I lose hill. Uh, and I start crying. I literally like burst into tears. Like I went outside. I was so determined, and I'm 33 times in a row. I figured I'm never going to have another shot, right? And so Tom Riccobene, a guy that you all may know, actually, I know Gage knows,
Yes.
Tom. Tom called me at my house, and he was like, there's one more qualifier in the United States, and it's in Colorado. It's in Colorado Springs at Antique Billiard Museum. And he said, I want you to go. He said, can you go? And I was like, I don't know. I asked my mom, and my mom very graciously drove me up there in an old camper that we had. and I won. So that was a huge thing, just to prove to myself, to
Yeah, I
prove to
bet.
my family, that I could cross over the line. So
Yeah.
yeah, getting to nationals was a big deal.
So you cried all the way back, and
Yeah,
you're happy.
Well, no, I mean, like a lot of people that talk about winning, the losing hurts so bad, but the winning oftentimes feels just like, okay, like that's what was supposed to happen. And you sometimes don't get as excited for the wins. I know I've struggled with that. Um, I think I got better as I got older, but when I was younger, when I would win, it was just like, okay, like next event, you know. After winning juniors, I won some others, smaller stuff in my early 20s, like 2021. But when moved, I moved to Arizona at 21 or 22, maybe. And I won a mid-sized tournament at a place called Colby's Corner Pocket. I'm not even sure if it's still there in Tempe, Arizona. But I beat a lot of the better players. I was getting a small spot, and then I won the tournament that was $500 added on these teeny pockets on table 6 there at Colby's. And I sort of proved to myself that on a big stage against really good players, I could still be the best guy. And that was huge. And I took that on, and when I moved to Colorado shortly after that, then I started winning the $1,000 added events there. I won the 8-ball and the 9-ball $1,000 added back to back at my local pool hall, and then I considered myself like a winner. You know what I mean? And when I went to big events, I understood like I was one of the guys that could win the whole thing. And I was probably around 23 or 24 when that happened. So that was just a huge turning point. I coach a lot of the younger guys around this area, and I tell them learning how to play is actually pretty easy compared to learning how to win, because there's so much that goes into winning these big events that it doesn't actually have a lot to do with how well you play. It's how well you think and how well you can manage your emotions and deciding when to attack, and table management, how well how savvy you are at table management, kind of. But anyhow, later on, I ended up winning the Nick Varner Classic, which was a huge event for me. I double dipped the guy on the final. Good friend of mine, Perry Gilbert. We went, I think it was races to 9, and I won 9-8, 9-8, and that was huge. And I won the Energy City Classic. I always wanted to win that, the biggest 9-ball tournament in our area, and I finally won that in 2018 after getting second and fourth, so that was huge. We won the Masters over Germany for the VNEA as a team. We beat like Spain and Finland and Japan, and one of the last American teams to win the Masters. And that was in 2014. Yeah, we don't win very often. Richie Cunningham, Ruben Silva, who was our MVP. Ruben Silva played absolutely out of his mind that year. I don't ever remember him missing a ball hardly. Chris Oneski and Jonathan Amo. Everybody played really, really well. And we were a huge underdog against Germany, and we beat them 13-7 first set in the final. So we just came with it. That was epic. That was epic to do that on that kind of stage. And, it's validating. There's so many of these wins. I mean, that's what I get out of so many of them. You've put so much work into the game. Your wins are validating. They're like, okay, I did get to the top of this pyramid. It's mentally difficult. It's physically difficult to figure the game out. And you've put a lot of work in on yourself, and then so much work in the game, and, countless hours of practice. And it feels good to finally finish, some of the things you start.
Do you have any tips or suggestions for our viewers going from practice to winning?
Oh, yeah. When you practice, it's okay to think behind the cue ball. Where's my bridge hand at? How's my grip feeling? Where are my feet at? How high is my head above the cue? And all these little things that you think of all the time, and you're always working on them. But when you compete, you always want to think about only stuff after the cue ball, which is just, where am I going to hit the cue ball? How's it going to touch the object ball? And where's it going on the table? Those are healthy thoughts when you're competing, and you can do small things like, I'm a little tight on the cue. Let's loosen up a little bit. Maybe make sure I really follow through nicely. But you want to think about quite simple things when you're competing. And when you're practicing, break down all the minutia. And this is common in all types of sports. Give yourself plenty of time before a tournament if you're going to change something. They say 2 weeks is kind of the bare minimum if you're going to change something drastic in your game, like your grip or how you stand or whatever. Do all the hard stuff in practice, and then when you compete, try to think of very little, really.
I love that distinction between behind the cue ball and in front of the cue ball.
That's amazing. But it's a different atmosphere when you're practicing versus tournament play or competitive play, and that's a mindset switch, like you talk about it, in front of or behind the cue ball. That's amazing.
Well, thank you. But what I think too, and you see people do it all the time, right? You can just watch the Mosconi Cup or any of the big events online, and sometimes the guys play really bad, and people are like, oh, I can't believe they're playing like this. But their adrenaline, they're trying to manage their adrenaline. They're trying to manage the slickness of the table that is unfamiliar to them as well. People think like, oh, they do that every day. No, it's different. They're playing on the side tables the whole tournament, and then they have to play on this dry, slick, racking different, a completely different table, different environment. And they'll get a little psyched out too. I mean, you see it every year at the Mosconi Cup pretty much. When your adrenaline is high, your fine motor skills get weaker. So the reason you want to calm yourself down is to be able to strike the ball with your fine motor skills as well as you can. Your adrenaline spikes, and then you try to put more effort into all your shots. Your stroke gets worse, yada, yada. And then you feel very uncomfortable. And if you feel uncomfortable, your speed control suffers. You miss easy balls. We've all done it. You miss things that you could never imagine missing in your entire life. And that tends to be either your blood sugar management or your adrenaline levels. There's a lot that goes into playing well when you're really uncomfortable.
No, it's just not in the pool world
Go
either.
on.
You'll see high stress times at the end of a football game, somebody gets overthrown. You'll see, in the last few holes of the Masters where somebody cooks a ball 15 yards over the green when they normally that would be in their area of where they would hit the ball exactly. So it's heart rate, adrenaline, your fine motor skills. That's a real good way of pointing that out. And you're exactly right. It can be tough to manage. A lot of experience, you can try to get it managed, I would imagine, but that's another whole facet, mental part of the game.
Sure, and that's something I coach a lot of the young guys on too. They get upset sometimes. They go, "Oh, the local tournament down at the pool hall only pays, $60 to $100 to win," and I'm like, "Yeah, but the value of learning how to win those events is worth thousands and thousands of dollars later." And people need to see you win those events. They don't care that it's for $60 or $70. They just know that you're the best guy there. And being the best guy there raises your stock price of you as a player because you need help. You need sponsors and endorsement deals, and you need backers and people that are going to, help you down the road. If they don't see you win that little tournament for $60, they're never going to know who you are. If you're waiting around to skip the little tournaments to win the big ones, we'll never know who you are.
And you have to get that experience. I mean, there's so much value in competition.
Oh, I mean, look, why do you think they have boxers fight a bunch of easy guys before they fight a big guy? You've got to prepare yourself mentally and physically for what those fights take and what the different strategies, the different physical things, the mental things you're going to need to beat tougher and tougher opponents. All sport works the same way. You should go win as many little events as possible, so that you think of yourself as a winner. You think of yourself as the best guy, and that these other guys probably can't handle you. It's important to think that way if you're going to go to the top.
In addition to that, how do you personally stay calm and focused during a match and during a tournament?
It's a good question. I think you should iron your pre-shot routine. And even more important to me, the final moment before you pull the trigger, meaning the final moment before you actually start to move the cue forward on your final strike. Where are your eyes going to be? How are you going to follow through? That needs to be very small and simple so that when you're under pressure, you have two things that you need a lot to perform. You need a high degree of certainty. Really, really important. Even I would say you could execute a bad plan that you're really, really certain about better than you could execute an amazing plan that you were kind of in between about. So I like to have high certainty about when I'm sitting in the chair before the match starts. I already know everything I'm going to do. I know exactly how I'm going to play. So nothing could happen, or very little could happen, that will push me outside that narrow lane that I'm trying to stick to of I'm going to do this with the shot, I'm going to do that, and that's it. I'm going to approach the shots like this. 100% of the time, if I'm down 8-0 in a race to 9, same exact processing. There is no gearing yourself way up or trying to find another level in the middle of the match. You hear guys say things like this. I think if you're looking for another level in the middle of the match, you've already lost it, probably. I like to iron my process out to be very simple, because I don't think you can think about a lot of things for very long without mentally exhausting yourself. So your process needs to be simple, and you need to know exactly what you're going to do, and then you'll manage pressure pretty well.
So a very defined process and something that's not going to exhaust you, something that's simple.
Simple. It's got to, in my opinion, it has to be simple.
I like it.
What kind of obstacles have you found and overcome in your game throughout your pool journey?
Yeah. Personally, I think I had a lot of the common issues that hold everybody back. I had a very accurate stroke for a long time, but I was holding the cue too tightly. So as long as the balls were close together, I was tended to be very good from a young age. But as soon as I needed more cue power, I didn't understand that the cue power came from the lack of tension in your grip. So the cue could move more quickly through the ball because you weren't affecting it with the pressure of your grip. All these books talk about, hold the cue like you're holding a baby bird and all this stuff. There's a million analogies, and they're not wrong, but I learned much, much better ways to tell people how to hold the cue that wasn't so metaphorical. Um, and then they all improved after that. And I improved too as I learned these things. Throwing the cue through the ball and all this. It's true. That is what you're doing. But if you try to throw the cue through the ball, you'll probably get some insane results. But that's what happens if you're holding the cue correctly. But no, I struggled mentally a lot when I was younger. I would win a tournament and then go 2-and-out of the next tournament. I think also that helped me instruct too, because I overcame so many of the basics. Took me a while to overcome. As well as I'm a little bit of a spazzy kind of guy. I talk quick and I jump back and forth with my thoughts a lot, and that comes out in my pool game. So I had to find defined kind of blocks to focus on, and that helped me play a lot better. It was almost to me like building a ship in a bottle. Like little things mattered a lot, and then eventually you have this beautiful thing, but it took you a year and a half maybe to put every little piece of the rigging together and things like that. It's like a lifetime project that you can just keep making better and better. That's how I feel about it anyway.
Do you have any hidden gems or secrets for improving a pool?
I actually do think I have something. It seems very simple, but it's gigantic. And I teach all of my students to think this way. You'll find that when you're standing up, like at address on the ball, so if you're standing right on the shot line from the cue ball to the object ball, that if you're right-handed, you could put your cue more or less on your right hip. It doesn't have to be squeezed to your hip or anything like that, but you have to step into the shot if you're right-handed, for instance, from your right hip, just because that's where the cue is going to end up, right on this right-hand side. So if you put your cue down, you don't have to put it down, but it's fine to do it, meaning on the shot line. And then on the cue ball, let your mind's eye slowly fall or go up to whatever point on the cue ball that you think is going to make the object ball and then make the cue ball go wherever you want it to go. When you're standing, your brain, once you've understand the basics of how the cue ball works, your brain will try to go right to the spot on the cue ball that will go to exactly where you want it to go. But once you get down, that spot will look wrong very often. If you choose the spot when you're standing and without squeezing the cue, follow through that mark that your brain landed on, as long as you don't hit it too hard where you slide the ball before you let it start spinning, it will go exactly where you told it to. Exactly. And I prove this to my students all the time. I put two balls side by side in the middle of the table, and then I have them make a ball. I have them do this decision-making process and then follow through very gently. And I put the balls side by side. So the tolerance is really narrow. And quickly, even players that aren't very good, when they come to me, they'll be able to hit one ball or the other ball. Even if they're going to go 2 rails, even if they're going to go 3 rails, you'll tend to touch one or the other as long as you follow your instincts while you were standing up. Ronnie O'Sullivan has a great bit on this in his new book, Unbreakable. That's not where I got the idea from, actually, but I was really interested that Ronnie O'Sullivan had a very, very similar idea. It sounds quite basic, but I guarantee you it works very, very well.
Yeah, interesting. I'd be curious to see that like in a more diagrammed or instructional way. Maybe you could create a video series someday.
Maybe. I will say this, just one of the principles I have about teaching is I think you have to break the teaching of pool and maybe golf, tennis, many sports, but let's obviously stick to pool. There is a scientific way to learn and an artistic way to learn. And to get really good, you need both of them. The scientific way of where do I put my feet to get my body out of the way, right? How do I hold the cue? What kind of bridge length is going to produce the best leverage to strike the ball, right? All these things that you can learn from a book or from a YouTube video, right? But the artistic side of playing, that's, I think, what I'm best at teaching. I take a lot of good players and make them quite good or great players. And I like to do that. I have a lot of guys now that have won titles that I started working with when they couldn't even win the local tournament. You need the artistic side, which is your own individual interpretation of where and how to strike the cue ball to make it do something for you. Because the ligaments in our arms, our brain chemistry, the height, the weight, how far your hips are above the ground, are going to vary how wide your stance will be and how your cue is able to deliver on a relatively level playing field, right? Or you're trying to keep the cue as level as possible. But the bottom line is that all three of us here are different heights and weights and have different brain chemistry, and our shoulders are a different width, and the tendons and ligaments in our shoulders and our muscles are different than everybody else's. So there's an artistic element to the game that's going to require you learning about you and how you strike the ball. And nobody on earth can tell you what it is. You have to get the direction and then form you around this principle, right? Like hitting the ball with a smooth stroke, right? Without holding the cue back with any tension in your hand. Well, look at Efren Kachi, who has a short backstroke and a short follow through, no elbow drop, right? And then, and is of course one of the best players on earth. And then Shane Van Boening, huge elbow drop at times, huge wave in his stroke, humongous bridge, big follow through, completely different ways to get to exactly the same result. This is why you can't teach people in a box, and those are two tall guys, right? And then you have Alex Pagulayan, short backstroke, follow through that varies all over the place. He said before that he's every shot's a little different to him, right? And then Josh Filler, small backstroke, small follow through, blah blah blah, but excellent momentum of the cue. Fedor Gorst, giant backswing, big follow through. We're all getting to the same result though, right? It's all about not holding the cue's momentum back as it goes through the ball. So there are no hard rules. It's going to be adapted to you. The rule is don't hold the cue, don't hold up the cue's momentum as it travels forward, whatever that means to you. And it's going to be really difficult for you to do that because your brain doesn't like it. Your brain doesn't like to let the cue travel forward because it feels out of control. So it tries to control it with your grip hand, and that causes all kinds of trouble.
Yeah, that's a great perspective. Like, don't get in the way of the cue. Let
Don't
the cue
get in
do
the
the
way.
work.
Let the cue do the work.
Does that mean you're a proponent of the slip stroke?
I get asked that a lot. No, I think if you're thinking about the slip stroke, you're probably already traveling down a dangerous path. The key is to not hold the cue back. If your personal grip lets the cue slip a little bit, I'm totally fine with that. Although if you came to me and you had a little bit of slip in your stroke, the first thing I would do is move the cue ball out to about 4 diamonds away and see if you could do anything with the cue ball. I would immediately start torturing you from distance. And if you can't do anything from distance, then I don't care what you can do up close because you have a giant hole in your game that's exploitable. So if we're trying to win, well, then we have to correct your grip immediately, right?
Yeah, I like to talk about consistency, and something like that just doesn't seem like it would be easy to be consistent with.
Yeah, but yet you see people that do. I have a whole range of things that I run players through. And the first thing I want to see is what you think you can do versus what you can actually do. And especially when I train players that are 700 Fargo or above, you got a guy that can do most things. And so the first thing I do is I figure out, A, if they're as good as they think they are, as far as show me some close ordered drill. Show me that you can control your cue ball close together and make it do exactly what you say. And then let me see it again from distance. And then I'm going to set you up with shots that require a lot of stroke power. And then I'm going to make you kill the ball from a great distance. I'm going to make you cut the ball with spin, cut the ball flat. How is your accuracy really? And how's your cue power really? And then we're going to build a package around that.
Some different instructors that we've had here on Cue the Experts say the exact same thing, challenging people. What can you do? What do you think you can do? And it's vastly different.
Important.
A great percentage of the time.
Oh, it's humongous. Yeah. I love it you get a lot of guys that, well, not a lot of guys, but you get certain people that come up with a very high opinion of their stroke or whatever, and usually you can break that in a couple of minutes. The game has, and it's not about breaking guys or whatever. It's just about showing them the limitations, right?
Right.
And some people never get it. There's a bunch of really good professionals out there that don't have a ton of cue power. There's ways to get around it. Nope, a lot of people aren't Shane Van Bonen with this mega cue power. And that's fine. I mean, Alex Pagulayan will never have the cue power of Shane Van Bonen. He just doesn't. And that's okay because he's great at other facets. But that's Alex being who he is and Shane being who he is. You have to, pool exposes both your physical and mental limitations really quickly. And you have to play somewhere within the bounds of who you are. And that will affect very much the ceiling that you have.
Has your mindset changed throughout your journey in pool, the mindset about pool?
Without a doubt. I went to England to play snooker, and I wanted to go over there and talk to some of the instructors, which I did. And they showed me mechanical ways to adjust, mechanical things about the game that allowed me to teach people how to create more cue power if they didn't already have it. And things about leverage, and the snooker instructors are significantly better, than a lot of ours anyway. I don't want to say all of ours, but I hadn't thought so much about leverage, how to get through the cue ball and how to hold the cue to force the cue to stay on a line a little bit better. And I don't want to go into too many details, but basically it opened my eyes a lot to some of the mechanical things in the game that I thought I'd already understood at a pretty high level. And I was like, okay, here's a whole nother space to live in. And it made me a better player for sure. And it allowed me to teach people quite a bit better, I would say. And that was just a few years ago. So I'm always learning. I'm a huge nerd for it. I could talk about teaching the game all day.
And the snooker players and instructors, those are some of the best cueists that you'll ever see on the planet. I mean, playing on a 12-foot snooker table is very, very demanding for your precision.
It's at a level that pool players can't, unless you've really played snooker before, especially on the nap cloth. That changes it a lot. You don't really, what they're doing out there, like what a Ronnie O'Sullivan or a Mark Selby or Neil Robertson or Judd Trump or what these guys are doing. Boy, it's a whole other level. It's the Cadillac of cueing on the face of the planet, in my opinion. If you have to pocket balls, obviously not discounting three cushion or anything.
Yeah, there's so many disciplines of cue sports, so it's great to experience all of them. I was going to ask, what's the weirdest advice you've ever gotten for improving?
Oh, there's so much bad advice out there. It's incredible. I don't know. I had a guy argue with me one time, and still to this day, he never agreed. He's like, you gotta flick your wrist. Like, he's like, that's the only way to get cue speed is to flick your wrist really hard. And I'm just like, that's just not true.
You're wrong.
It's just not true. I would almost say in a similar vein, rather than a single piece, more the theory of teaching at large. There are so many people. TikTok is a gigantic offender, but it's all over YouTube and any other thing that does short videos of people that are pool like instructors or something like this, just giving advice that's absolutely wrong. I mean, just not even close. They're just missing the mark by a mile. I just think the fact that there's so much instruction out there that is so popular, that is really, really poorly done, that maybe is the most shocking to me.
I've seen a lot of what I would just call noise on social media, specifically Facebook, regarding things on the pool table. And I'm like, that is not right.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, but I'm sure both of you guys have seen this, and a lot of your viewers will have certainly seen it. There are a lot of people out there that don't play very well, but for some reason think that they're thinking about the game is at like a professional level, and they're happy to tell you that. And I'm like, it's just not true at all. You don't know what you're talking about. It doesn't mean everything you're saying is wrong, but if you've never won your local APA board or whatever, then I don't want to talk to you about what it takes to play at the U.S. Open. I just don't. I don't think you know enough.
Do you have one thing that's improved your game the most over your journey?
One thing. I mean, that's so tricky. I mean, it sounds so simple, but I think almost learning what your eye pattern, like learning how you truly work your eye pattern, and it will be completely individual to you. Every time someone's like, you look at the cue ball twice and then the object ball twice, I'm like, no, it's not. You read that in a book. What do you like to do? Where your eyes end up on the final delivery of the cue, that might matter more than any other single piece of advice you could possibly get.
That's great.
It might matter that much, because certainty, your eyes go to the cue ball, to the object ball, to the cue ball, to the object ball, a certain number of times to make you feel good. And that'll be up to you, completely up to you. But when you pull the cue backwards and push it forwards to strike the cue ball, your eyes will go, they'll try to get distracted. So you have to be very clear. Am I going to look at the cue ball last? Or am I going to look at the object ball? Am I going to watch the cue ball touch the object ball? And if that's what you're going to do, cool. But learning that about yourself, what exactly am I going to do? Like Jeremy Jones looks at the cue ball last. I think that's insane. But Jeremy Jones, U.S. Open champion, Mosconi Cup champion, might disagree with me, right? Most people like to watch the cue ball hit the object ball. But like Ralph Souquet, he looks at the object ball last, and he had a pretty decent career. So you can do it either way, but you need to figure out what you like to do.
Was this something that you figured out a long time ago in your journey?
Yes, I actually read it in an interview with Nick Varner in like 1997. This was like 2000 or something when I was reading it, but it was an interview with Nick Varner, and he'd either just won something, and they were talking to him about instructing. It doesn't matter. But Nick Varner said, I want to watch the collision. He said, I want to see the collision of the cue ball into the 9-ball. And he goes, if I watch the collision, I'll never miss it. And so I tried that, and I found that when I watched the collision, I rarely missed too. And so I kind of found my eye pattern quickly, kind of understanding. And like Gage has seen me play a lot. He knows to this day, I don't take a lot of practice strokes. I kind of, a couple little dabs, I pull back, I look at the object ball, and I fire. And for me, that works very well. But I would never teach someone to do that. That's unique to me. I have a short attention span. I do. So when I'm down there, I kind of got to go ding, ding, ding. Is that right? Okay, let's go.
So you found what works for you, and you help other people find what works for them.
Exactly. And I've never even attempted to teach someone the way that I do it, because that's me. The principle is, where are your eyes going to be? I have to help them find where their eyes like to be. It has nothing to do with where my eyes like to be.
As we go through some pool tips and strategies here, I think I keep going on this because it's probably my fall off from grace is the mental side of the game. And how do you stay calm and focused when the stakes are high or it's a lot of pressure or you're trying to keep your heart rate down and just be able to stay in your fundamentals and rely on whatever it is that you can rely on to get you through the match?
Sure. I get that question a lot. And really, the answer is pretty simple. Look, there are healthy thoughts and there are unhealthy thoughts.
No, that's good.
Unhealthy thoughts are, I sure hope I put my feet in the right place. I sure hope that I'm not squeezing the cue. I sure hope I don't miss this ball. I sure hope that my cue ball makes it far enough across the line for the next shot so I can get down on the next ball, all this stuff. Healthy thoughts are, I'm going to strike the cue ball right here, and the cue ball is going to go right there, and I'm going to watch the contact point. That's it. Those are healthy thoughts because those are things that you need to get done on the table. They don't have to do with the pretty girl that's watching on the side rail or the annoying guy that won't shut up over there or the light on this table. The light on this table is flickering and, whatever. And a lot of people that have watched me play know that I fall into bouts of severe anger and stuff quite often. I'm always having to fight against it. My natural instinct is to get really mad, not at other people, but at myself. And that's an unhealthy thing. And the better I play, I get less mad because just like any other tool, you realize like, oh, this is a waste of my time. But when I compete intermittently, I'm way more likely to get mad because I am not in the groove of staying calm. So when you talk about you struggle mentally, I can almost instantly say, okay, well, you might not compete very often. And when you do compete, there's too much pressure there. So now your anxiety is crazy high. So all these little things might be bugging you because as soon as your anxiety gets high, you can feel how tight your shoelaces are. You can feel that your shirt sits funny on you, or the guy over there is talking too much, or your eyes are a little bit dry. You're thinking about all this little crap because your anxiety's at a 10, right? Your fear, just like the blood lipids, or I forget the exact way to say it, but basically your anxiety reactors are keyed up, right? So you need to bring them down, and you can bring them down by having things that you can easily rely on. Because what you want is focus. That's why having like a good leader is important for an army. It's not that he's the smartest guy in the world. He can keep everybody on the same track. And that's what you need your brain to do. There's a lot of moving pieces, and you need one general saying, hey, there's a lot of moving pieces, but your job is to watch the cue ball touch the object ball. That's your mission. Okay? And then if you just focus on the mission, well, all those other things, despite the fact that they're happening, become much easier to deal with because you have a clear goal.
Oh, I love that analogy of your brain is like an army and your like your prefrontal cortex is the general.
Yeah, you need clear direction. And oftentimes you need it to be simple, easy to follow.
All right, so going the opposite of clear, what's your most embarrassing moment during pool match?
I was 17, or I might have been 18 or 19 years old, and I was in Vegas playing the BCA Nationals, and I was in a match that would have taken me into the Masters division, which I would have been quite young to have done. It would have happened before I was ready, if I'm being honest, but I didn't know that at that time. Back in the day when there was just open and masters at BCA, there was like 1,600 people in the open division, and you had to get in the top 48 or something like that to graduate to the masters division. And I was on that match. If I would have won the match, I was in the top 48. And if I lost, I finished out in the top 64 or whatever. And I got up 4-0, and I didn't make any mistakes. And then I proceeded to get to the 8-ball in almost every single game following, and I missed the 8-ball. I made the 8-ball and scratched. I hooked myself on the 8-ball twice, and I lost 5-4 in an epic meltdown. And once again, I started crying. You would think I cry all the time when I play, but it's only happened like 3 times, and this is one of them. And there was a whole bunch of people watching, and I went over to the wall in the convention center. And if you guys remember the old BCA Convention Center, a lot of the walls were the pull-through walls that were pretty soft and flexible. And I, being distraught, just figured that all the walls were pretty soft and flexible.
Oh
And
no.
yeah, you can see where this is going. And I was so distraught. I didn't even put my cues away. Once again, I can be a big baby. I admit it. I've gotten better, but I have little bouts of it. I drug my cues over to the wall and I slammed my head against the wall. Not super hard, but pretty hard. And that wall was made of concrete. So I hurt myself. I'm crying. I'm embarrassed. And then I hurt myself real bad right in front of everybody. So
Wow.
when you get really distraught, just put your cues away and go back to your hotel room like a gentleman.
Yeah.
That helps a lot. But I was a 19-year-old kid and I was very mad at myself. Uh,
If you're not crying after a pool match every once in a while, you're not trying hard enough.
Yeah, I tell a lot of my students that I get a lot of people that come to me and they say, I want to be a professional. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll get you as far down that path as I possibly can. And at some point, as I watch these guys win and lose and all this, and some of them will start crying or tell me like, hey, you might not believe this, but I went back to my hotel after that match and I was crying. And I was like, if you have never cried after a loss in pool, then you're probably not very good. The game is brutal. Uh, Ralph Souquet, I've seen cry. I've seen Ronnie O'Sullivan break down. Mark Selby's hard men. I mean, people that have won a million things. The game will break you, buddy. The game is really difficult on your brain because you're trying to do something really that requires a lot of fine motor skills, like I've talked about, and under extreme pressure, and your brain hates that. It's a really challenging thing for your brain to do and for your body to do. So that's why you have to practice so damn much. That's why all the good players, you just play and you play and you play and you play because you're so paranoid that something might go wrong. And if you could just put the package together a little bit tighter, then maybe you won't have to suffer so much when the time comes to suffer.
Yeah, the sport is really not about this macho, like move the cue ball a lot. It's a very precise finesse sport.
But yeah, now all you got to do is get like 10 good players together and you'll find 10 big nerds that like to talk about the game and have all these different theories. And I mean, you have to be into it big time. And I think any sport is probably that way, but with pool, you've got to be a big nerd about the game to get good at it at all, really. So, but I love that. I love all the people. I think that I've gotten along with the pool community really well because I understand that, we're all just a bunch of nerds that like to hit balls with sticks.
We like studying it, getting better, and that's part of this podcast is talking about all this stuff. So we've been having fun with it.
Yeah.
I think being emotional about your game, obviously you don't want to be, over the top in a bad way, but crying about it or having it hurt, having that much of a feel, just means it's a show of how much it means to you, how much work you put in, how much you want it, and so it's perfectly natural, I would think.
Yeah, it is perfectly natural. Any athlete that you see crying after a win or a loss, I think when the audience is like, "Oh, what a big baby! Like this is your job. You should be, more professional." I'm like, "Oh man, that just shows me you have no idea what it takes to win at something like this. You have no idea. It is so difficult to look. How ballsy is it to show up in a room of 100 some people that are all trying to be good at the same thing that you're trying to be good at, and you have the audacity to say, oh, I'm probably the best here. That's crazy. I mean, it's not crazy, but it takes a lot of, a hell of a mindset, right? And you have to have practiced and really ironed out these things to think, I'm probably the best. I'm probably going to beat all of you. I mean, that's pretty hardcore, and that takes a pretty extreme mindset, and which means that your emotions are going to be riding on that. You've had to pump yourself up through all kinds of different means to even think that you might be that person. And then when you're faced with that and you're in the semifinals and it's tied 8-8 in a race to 9 and you get straight in on the last ball and miss it, well, that's going to hurt.
Yeah, devastating.
It's going to hurt really, really bad. And sometimes it's going to make you cry. And that's okay. You just got to be ready to do it again. But no, the game is ruthless. I mean, all games are really at a high enough level, but certainly true in pool.
Yeah, it just shows the passion, and then you learn a lot from that too.
If you could actually pick somebody to go ahead and play against, or a match or whatever, living or deceased, who would that be?
I mean, you want to say Efren Reyes, right?
Yeah,
I would say Efren Reyes, and then I also I would play Nick Varner in his prime.
Yeah,
fantastic guy. A lot of people forget in the late '80s, early '90s, Nick Varner was an absolute terror, and had all the games too.
Unbeatable.
Yeah, literally unbeatable. He won 2 world championships back to back, which nobody's almost ever done ever. Efren Reyes says he was the smartest player that he ever played in his life. Nick Varner was playing top tier 1 pocket all the way up until he was extremely old. And still to this day, Nick can play. I don't know how old he is now, but I watched him play an exhibition match several years ago, and you wouldn't have any illusions that he wasn't at one time a champion. So I'll stick with those. Nick Varner, Efren's he's the GOAT still to me. Even if he couldn't beat a modern Federer or Shane, Efren in my generation can't get much better than that.
Absolutely. Should we throw
ahead,
some
Dave.
quick questions at you?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So cue stick, wood or carbon fiber shaft?
Ooh, I'm 41. Wood.
Yeah. Glove.
I like the
bare
feel.
hand?
I like the feedback. Bare hand.
Yeah. 8-ball or 9-ball?
9-ball.
Full size table or bar box?
I actually really appreciate the bar table, but the full size table is, when you're queuing good on the full size table, nothing feels quite that good.
Leagues or tournaments?
Tournaments.
Yeah. And here's one. If you could play the best pool in your life and lose, would you favor that over playing the worst pool of your life and winning?
Well, man, I have to be honest. Worst pool of my life and winning. Although both would be pretty satisfying, but every tournament I win and I didn't feel like I really played my best, I'm like, well, a dub's a dub.
Well, our podcast viewing audience and listeners can understand that it takes a heck of a lot to build a pool table like a battleship in a bottle. So if you can come out on the winning side of that,
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, the game it's a lifetime journey. Everyone that plays knows that. You never stop getting better. You never stop learning about the game. And maybe more importantly, you never stop learning about yourself and the different, emotions and the physical part of the game and blah, blah, blah.
Well, none of those trophies behind Gage or that you have will say how bad you played, but they all going to go ahead and notate first place that you won.
Well, I remember I won the Wyoming Open in 2014, and I felt like I played awful the whole way through that thing. And I double dipped the guy in the final, a good friend of mine, Don Parker, and I was certain I was going to lose. It just, you never know. Sometimes I felt like I was, cueing terribly. Every now and again, you just watch the cue ball hit the object ball. Sometimes that's enough.
So besides watching the cue ball hit the object ball, what's one piece of advice you would give to anyone watching to improve their pool game?
Everyone tells you to hold the cue lightly, okay? And that is true. You need to hold the cue lightly. But you don't need to necessarily hold it slack. meaning if there's too much room above the cue in your hand where it can rattle around, that's nice, but it's better to hold the cue a little more up in your hand where you can control it, but don't squeeze it on the way forward through the ball. So this way your brain understands that it has enough control, so it won't try to snatch it on the way forward, or it will try less to snatch it on the way forward. But on the forward stroke, if you don't squeeze, then you'll have plenty of cue speed to make the cue to just use the weight of the cue, all right, through the ball. But don't lose control of it by holding it really slack. Like you'll see people that even break the thumb and forefinger away from the cue, or pointer finger away from the cue. And then they have a loose grip, but it's completely out of control. You want to bring your grip up here where you can control the cue, but don't squeeze it on the way through the ball.
Good stuff.
I know that's a longer answer than maybe you were looking for, but I think that's one of the most important things that you can learn initially.
Well, remind our viewers and everybody where they can find you and learn about your instruction.
I do not have, I'll be honest, I've been very fortunate. I am busy all the time. I can give lessons 7 days a week. I actually turn a lot of people away. I don't have anything on the internet. I don't have a card. I do all of my instruction by word of mouth. I should probably get, obviously it depends on how much instruction I want to do, right? It's never been my full-time job, but I think I'm quite good at it, and my students do too. So there is no way.
Get a hold of Adam King, you can probably get there through Jeremiah Gage anyway. So
I was going to say Jeremiah Gage is a good place to start, or you can just hit me up on Facebook or Instagram is fine.
All right.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, we really appreciate you coming on the show, Adam.
I appreciate you having me. Yeah, no, thank you very much. And I think what you're doing here is a really good thing. And keep at it. I know it's hard to make these shows. And thanks, Dave. Thanks, Gage. And I wish you guys a lot of success.
Yeah, we hope everybody likes and subscribes and shares the podcast. Make some comments while you watch it on YouTube. I'm sure Adam will be around to go ahead and comment on any of those questions that you may have once you watch the podcast. It's been fantastic.
Yeah, let me know. And yeah. Thank you guys very much.
And for our viewers, thanks for watching and tuning in. Keep practicing, and may all your shots be on target.